Hey guys, this is Josh from Grapplezilla, and today I've got a great guest on the Grapplezilla podcast. I got Val Childs from Combat City Catch Wrestling in San Antonio, Texas. Val's got an amazing Instagram page and an awesome catch wrestling school. He does North American catch wrestling, and he's an extremely talented wrestler, extremely talented boxer, extremely talented catch wrestler. And I want to know his story, and I think you guys should too. So here we go. Val, how you doing, buddy?
Wonderful, wonderful. Happy to be here. Thank you for hosting me.
So, Val, I'm watching your videos. First of all, I don't think people understand. If you go to Val's page, he is in his 40s and he's wrestling like he's 18 and moving like that. And you have wonderful technique. So, listen, tell me about yourself. How did you get into catch wrestling? Your origin story. What is it?
Sure. So, I started training catch wrestling under my father, Val Childs, Sr., in 1987. 1987. So I'm coming up on my 39th year. I'm 43. So I'm probably, out of all of the guys that's known in catch wrestling circles, I've probably been doing catch wrestling longer than all of these guys, big names included. Because I started training in 1987. I started training in catch wrestling, North American style catch. So my father, Val Childs Sr., was actually trained by the great heavyweight boxing champion Archie Moore. And what many people don't realize about Archie is that Archie was what was called a combination man, who was a boxer and a catch wrestler. So they usually trained in the same gyms, right? Archie was trained by Lou Thez. Okay. Now Lou Thez was then trained by Ray Steele, George Tragos, Ad Santel, and the list goes on and on. And so in my lineage, I have some of the best North American stylists that ever lived. And it's an unbroken chain that goes back, right? And so I am very proud of the fact that I represent the American tradition of submission wrestling with an unbroken chain. Due to the fragmented nature of the catch community, a lot of guys had to go outside of the U.S. to get their training in catch wrestling, whether they went to Japan or elsewhere. But for me, I started training in 1987, which was effectively in response to, the wave of the crack epidemic coming into the Black community. So I was living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the time, which is where I was born. So for those of you who don't know where Wisconsin is, it's close to Canada and it's get really cold up there. Okay. So around 1987, the gangs from Chicago started to come into Milwaukee. So Chicago was only 90 miles south of Milwaukee. And so with the rising pressure and tensions from the Reagan administration at the time, say no to drugs, there was a lot of pressure being put on cities to get their gang and crack issues under control. And a lot of the criminal enterprises or the gangs decided that they would start to branch out, and they started migrating to different cities. And so Milwaukee was a great proxy city for that. And so my neighborhood that I lived in was a bed and breakfast community. It was full of old folks, families, hardworking people. Everyone worked in factories. It was just classic America, right? You worked at a place, you got a pension, and you retired, and you took care of your family. So true to the Rust Belt tradition. And then within a matter of 3 years, so by the time 1990 came around, houses were burnt down, gone. The gangs had taken over the area. Residents were effectively prisoners in their own community. And so when I trained in catch wrestling, I was training the complete application of catch wrestling, not the sport application of catch wrestling. I was training catch wrestling for the purposes of combat, for fighting. And now
So
all this
catch
is
wrestling
before
with teeth. Catch wrestling with
catch
teeth.
wrestling with teeth. Yes. Catch wrestling with teeth. So everything that I was taught as far as, pin mechanics and pain mechanics, they were intended to, have a true physical contest with another person. It was not just for the sportive aspect, right? And so, and for that reason, in the North American lineage of catch, you find guys that were more closely connected with fighting and combat application. Whereas with guys outside of the North American lineage, especially like in the English lineage, you see more sportive catch. Nothing wrong with it. The techniques, they're comparable, but the application and the level of aggression of how they are applied, there's a different knowledge there as well, because one is, layered with actual combat. So like for myself, being in those areas, I had to engage in a lot of physical disputes with people, and I had to use my my catch wrestling. Back then, we just called it rough and tumble. So I was known for being very good at rough and tumble. So if we had a scrap, it didn't matter what guys did, I had an answer for them. So back when I was probably like 9, 10 years old, I was looking like what MMA guys look like today, because the boxing, the kickboxing, the dirty boxing, all that was intertwined with the catch wrestling. So there was no separation.
That's absolutely amazing. And the fact that it came first from Archie Moore, I mean, that speaks tons. But also, I am quite like knowledgeable on Lou Thez, and that speaks like incredible amounts. Here's a question. In school, did you also get a chance to also train in folk style, like go to the wrestling team, etc.?
I did, because I was drawn to it. And so, being from Wisconsin, in the Midwest, it's the breadbasket of wrestling. It's what we do. We wrestle and we box in the Midwest. I mean, we're known for other things too, like judo, American kickboxing. We have a lot we have a strong martial tradition, but wrestling and boxing, Wisconsin is a stronghold for that. And so, in elementary school, I was in the Pee Wee leagues. I wrestled. Middle school, I wrestled. High school, I wrestled. Then I switched off of wrestling. But I competed quite extensively. I won, city, state, region, and super regional titles in folk style wrestling. Interestingly enough, we didn't have the national high school wrestling tournament that we have now. That was just kind of being started up in like 93 or so. So it wasn't a thing. You kind of won your state and your region, and that was considered, noteworthy. But I competed quite extensively. So I did get the sportive aspect of it. As far as the mat wrestling, I got the sportive aspect of it. And yeah, there were instances while I was competing in folk style where I may have been too aggressive using a chicken wing, inappropriately. But back then, folk style wrestling allowed for you to do more. You could scissors around the body. You could catch a double wrist lock or a chicken wing, and you could use it as a pin mechanic. Or a pinning technique. You could run it in combination with different things, chin strapping. There were a lot of things that you could do that they've started to, they phased out in recent times.
That's absolutely. Now, here's the question. Did you ever consider going to like college in wrestling as well, or is it harder?
Yeah,
Like,
so um, I had, I was a multi-sport athlete myself. But
which
I,
sports?
I
Just out of
played, well, so I boxed. Um, I did football, I did track, I did basketball, and I also did baseball. I did play baseball. Uh, so
definitely a
uh,
shortstop.
yeah, oh yeah. um, Kickball is also a sport, but people don't want to talk about that. It's one of those sports that you just got to play to love. And then there was wrestling. So I was a red-shirted first year for University of Wisconsin. That was D1 level for wrestling. At the time, my then girlfriend got pregnant, and so then I had to walk away from you know any wrestling at the D1 level and focus on planning for my family that was coming along. And so then I switched to the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee. They had a wrestling club, but they didn't have a formal wrestling team. And so it was at that point that I then started to focus. Now we're talking like 2001. So it's at this time I start to focus on uh, the new wave of Val Childs that was coming and MMA fighting that was coming. And so I started a training club with a couple of guys, and we got together. We had different disciplines, different backgrounds, and we started to pull together what we would call MMA, right? No holds barred fighting. And at the time, it was illegal in the country. I think Senator John McCain, the late Senator John McCain, may he rest well, described it as human cockfighting. And so we would have these tournaments, and we would have to get as many matches in as we can, and we might be there, might have 4 or 5 matches while we're there, or 4 or 5 fights, if you will, and then we had to get out of there because we would be arrested for fighting. And so the Wisconsin tradition of MMA and systemizing it, putting it together, the boxing, the Muay Thai, the karate techniques, the submission wrestling, the catch wrestling. I was among the first class of people in Wisconsin that put it all together and helped influence what would later be the template for what people call MMA. And I had no idea this is what we were doing. We were just having fun. We were even in college, we were having fun. We were just going to fight, eating pizza, living the life, fixing cuts, going to class. And who would have thought that this pastime of us being crazy would become something. We never thought it would become like the UFC of today. We never saw it coming.
So then what happens? How did you get to Texas, San Antonio? Because was it the weather? I'm thinking the weather might have played a little bit there.
So I didn't come to Texas until 2015. So it would be 14 years later that I came to Texas. So I didn't leave Wisconsin until 2012. So I was also a competitive amateur boxer. And I had compiled a record of 142 fights, 132 knockouts, and 2 losses. I ended up having to retire in 2006 from boxing because I had damage from my eye. So I had 2 situations happen that influenced that. But what primarily happened was I had got E. coli poisoning back in 2006, and it damaged my internal organs and it damaged my eyes, interestingly enough. And I also had suffered a very severe eye poke as well. And so it caused just damage to my retinas. And so in 2006, I retired from boxing, and I just became a common man. I was working, and I, worked as a professional in the field of accounting. I would help out in training camps, organize training camps. I was still training fighters, though. And I would also work as a sparring partner for professional prospects in boxing. So I would work alongside them, getting them ready to compete. And after about 4.5 years, my eyes healed. But by that time, I was pretty well settled into my routine with family, and I was pretty settled in my career. The money wasn't very big for what I wanted to go into, wanting to go into MMA. The money wasn't there at the time. So I couldn't justify leaving my job where I was doing really well for myself. I had a very good real estate portfolio. Family was living a really good life. I couldn't justify putting all that down to go fight for, a couple thousand, less than $8,000 of an MMA fight. Just couldn't justify it. And so I was working in the field of accounting for a while. And in 2012, an opportunity came along that took me to Oklahoma. And when I got to Oklahoma, I was there because I was working in oil and gas. And from there, I just sort of rounded out to Atlanta, Georgia, because I was still oil and gas accounting. And then I came to Texas, oil and gas. And that's how I, got to Texas. And then once I got to Texas, however, I then eventually settled in San Antonio. That's the short of it. My first stop was Houston, but then I moved to San Antonio. And it's from there, I then proceeded to meet my current wife and established our MMA academy, Combat City Catch Wrestling.
Amazing.
And that happened in 2021. So it was quite a journey.
So what's the martial arts scene in San Antonio like? I'd imagine heavy wrestling. Like what is it?
Wrestling is not very big in Texas. Wrestling is especially lacking in San Antonio. San Antonio as a martial arts scene is jiu-jitsu land. You can go, just like you can find a McDonald's on every corner, you can find a jiu-jitsu gym within blocks, sometimes even next door to each other. They are that plentiful. So jiu-jitsu is very, very dominant. There's a lot of karate here, a lot of traditional martial arts. And it's quite interesting because football is very popular here. Football and soccer are very, very popular here. But the sentiment in Texas is that they don't want people to be injured. So less people box. More people do point and forms karate. And then they do jiu-jitsu, but they don't do wrestling because they think wrestling is too dangerous. However, the fight scene in San Antonio, ironically, is very big, especially amateur MMA. There are a number of youth leagues as well that really do cultivate a lot of talent. So they do host cage fights for youth, heavily regulated, though. You can't punch to the head, but yet you can punch to the head in boxing if you're the same age, right? But you can't do it in MMA, which is, a very, very strong martial arts scene, but certain martial arts have a stronghold and are more mature in this market, whereas others are, they have a ways to go. Wrestling, especially in my space, submission wrestling and traditional wrestling, like folk style, freestyle, and Greco. These are styles that we've been pushing. So we were one of the first gyms to really figure out how to make money in wrestling, because it was hard to make money in wrestling because you got jiu-jitsu everywhere. So, but we figured out how to make money in wrestling. And a lot of the jiu-jitsu gyms started to add wrestling clubs to compete with the fact that we were a wrestling club. So you'll go to USA Wrestling, and this is a ick for me. You go to USA Wrestling and you'll see wrestling clubs, and you go to the website and it takes you to a jiu-jitsu academy, and a jiu-jitsu academy says to you when you walk in there, yeah, we train wrestling twice a week, an hour each class, but you got to train jujitsu, you got to train in the gi, you got to train this, and then they price you up to your ears, right, with a package, right? And you and I know, you can't just dedicate 2 hours a week to wrestling. You can't just say you can't say a class. It has to be a practice. It's got to be at a minimum 2 hours, 3-hour stretch. You just have to have it that way. And so we were, we didn't intend to be, but we were pioneers in some ways in the San Antonio market with respect to wrestling. We proved the concept of the effectiveness of wrestling, the viability of it as a business model. And we've taught people to love wrestling here. And so we're very proud of that.
I find that's very interesting, because there's no doubt jiu-jitsu has exploded in the US, also globally. And but the fact you also have traditional martial arts there, I find quite fascinating. I mean, how does that
karate, especially karate? I mean, listen,
like proper traditional karate.
I mean, proper traditional regular tournament circuit. Yes, regular tournament circuit, weapons, forms, competition leagues overseas. I mean, I was surprised too, because I come from the old school karate, Kyokushin, Kempo Goju. I come from the old school where we actually fought. I come from
proper
the old school.
Karate.
Yeah, where you're on the stage, you're on the platform, and you're getting knocked off the platform. I come from the old school hard knocks of karate. And so the modern sport karate is not that, obviously, but it has so much engagement and support from the community. And I think a lot of it has to do with the culture of San Antonio. A lot of the children are homeschooled. A lot of the children are homeschooled, and the families are fairly traditional. So the dad works, the mom stays at home, the children are homeschooled, and then they find ways to keep the children busy, and they want to give them access to physical fitness, as part of the homeschool program. But they don't want to have to deal with the children suffering any types of injuries. So they put them in karate. And I think plus us being a very military city, we have a lot of bases here, Lackland Air Force Base and so on and so forth. I think the culture is attracted to the structure and the discipline that karate presents and the structure and the discipline that jiu-jitsu presents. So it makes it appealing. Whereas wrestling is outside of that. Wrestling is sort of like Delta Force guerrilla tactics. Yeah, it's a grind. You got to show up and
you don't know what's coming. Like jiu-jitsu, if you're a blue belt, I wouldn't say, it depends on the academy, but there's a curriculum. In wrestling, there is a curriculum, obviously, but you never know what's going on because, you do poorly at one tournament and next thing you know, you're practicing sprawling defense over and over and over for the next month, right? So
yeah, you can't profile a wrestler. You can profile a jiu-jitsu blue belt, a jiu-jitsu purple belt, a jiu-jitsu brown belt. And the reason you can profile them is because one, curriculum, two, techniques that are allowed by belt level, right? And so you kind of you can kind of prepare yourself to make some educated guesses on what this person is capable of, generally speaking.
Do you get sorry, just I have to ask this question. Do you get a lot of issues with the jiu-jitsu community? Or do you get some support from certain schools, or animosity?
A mix. So the grappling community is a very sensitive community. Not the wrestling community. But when I say grappling community, I'm talking about the private enterprise grappling community. Right? So you're talking about the jiu-jitsu community in this case. So, and culturally speaking, A lot of the community's values are underpinned by Brazilian culture. And so they have a different way of engaging with you and interacting with you. And oftentimes there is pushback from these private enterprises within the grappling community for anything that is different, because they're all trying to keep their students. And for many of the Brazilians, this is their livelihood. You know, they didn't come here to the United States to work construction or other things. They came here and they're teaching jiu-jitsu, and that's their focus. And so they, I certainly was met with pushback from opponents within this grappling community. I've had dojo stormers. I've had incidents occur at the gym. I've had numerous things. Then I've also had some folks be open-minded and accepting and supportive. But I would say overwhelmingly, we have faced opposition. And in order for us to keep our gym open, I had to fight for it.
And literally fight for it.
Yeah, literally I had, so there's about 48 documented incidents of altercations I've had with people who've walked in the gym. And, you know, they call in the spirit of brotherhood and, oh, I want to come in and I want to train catch and I'm such a fan of it and blah, blah, blah. And then they will get there, you know, saying, hey, I wanted to do a private with you. Okay, fine. And then they get there and it's nothing of the sort. And at the time we weren't even offering privates, you know what I'm saying? So, but they just wanted to get in and do training. And I had a moment in time where when we were building out the space, I was letting people in to the space just to kind of familiarize them. I was kind of, you know, trying to give personhood to the system of catch. So they meet a person who is a catch wrestler, they talk to you, they interact with you, they get to see who you are, your values, and then make the choice on whether or not they want to do business with you and train with you. But oftentimes these guys had ulterior motives. And so there have been many instances where I can be showing them a move, and then all of a sudden they turn it into something more sinister. And I've had to have guys, you know, I've had to face guys calling the gym, threatening me, threatening my wife. Guys walk in the gym same day and say, hey, we don't like you here. We don't want catch wrestling here. Take that effing catch wrestling and go somewhere. And I've had to deal with them on the mats. So we had a lot of incidents like that. It's actually one of the reasons why we started recording our training sessions, which is why when you go to my Instagram, you'll see everything is not scripted. Everything is real. But people can't tell the difference between the actual confrontations that I've had, because we had some confrontations and they're recorded and they're posted. But people can't tell.
Saying, man, that people, you know, like I'm a lover of grappling arts and the grappling sports, etc. And I guess it's a bit different in my viewpoint. If there was a new grappling style that I didn't know about, the first thing I would want to do is learn about it. I wouldn't want to prove that something's better or worse, because, you know, for example, I find in the grappling world, a lot of, like, jiu-jitsu is very dominant currently in terms of marketing. And I love jiu-jitsu. I'm a jiu-jitero. I love it. But quite often, if there is like a new cultural grappling art, they'll look at it and they'll say, oh, but they could never win the world. But they don't understand that maybe only like 2,000 people practice this and it's cultural, but it still might offer something. And it's a very interesting viewpoint into that culture's history. And it's a beautiful thing. But that is quite sad, like that they couldn't just say, hey, listen, because I think personally, catch wrestling's got a lot to offer. In fact, what would you say that catch wrestling would offer a jiu-jitero, like, that maybe they don't know?
Fundamentals of grappling. first and foremost. And so when I say that, I say that in the most respectful way. So fundamentals of grappling have to deal with the fact that 100% of confrontations are going to start standing. 100%. So understanding balance, right? Understanding hand fighting, depth of perception, and being able to decide when you go to the ground, how you go to the ground. Then once you get to the ground, the ability to immobilize and pin an opponent, to stop their movement, to be energy efficient, the ability to control an opponent who is fully resisting with everything they have that is trying to get up, and your ability to keep them down, and your ability to bring them back to the ground. And then lastly, the ability to use pain mechanics to control an opponent without their will. These are just a few of the things that I would say are essential for all grappling. If you train judo has pain mechanics. They may not be used in the modern tournament circuit as they once were, but they certainly have pain mechanics. Pinning, judo has pinning. And obviously judo can dictate from hand fighting when something's going to go to the ground. They do it through a throw. As catch rushers, we can do it through the same repertoire of throws, but also attacks to the legs, takedowns, trips, sweeps. We have all that as well in our repertoire. But I think the Jiu-Jitsu is probably in a position to benefit from those key things that I mentioned. And it will dramatically change how you execute. You may be a guard player, for example, because I have students in my academy who are guard players because they come from jiu-jitsu. But the fact that once they add all the other elements to their grappling game, their reliance on the guard diminishes significantly. And there are times where they just want to smash their opponent and exercise top control and exhaust them and hurt them. And I've seen people give up just being mauled. And then you have the ability to switch into the guard. I think the greatest misconception actually about catch wrestling, right, is that it's ancient, it's outdated, and it's only in the professional world of wrestling for whatever reason. I think that's what people think when they think of catch wrestling. They don't think about the fact that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes from catch wrestling as well. The one of the parent systems of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is catch wrestling. A lot of the Nawaza in Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of the ground submissioning comes from catch wrestling, but it comes from catch wrestling without the application of pinning. The pressure connections, right? I should have mentioned the pressure connections and the pain mechanics. Those things are gone. They're not in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu anymore. But you see some people, some practitioners who will add and try to incorporate things. But if you're talking about overall, so just to rehash, balance from the neutral position, the standing position, hand fighting, the ability to initiate takedowns, stop takedowns, pin, right? Isolate, control, pressure, keep them on the mat, stop them from getting up, actual controls that immobilize the body, and then pain mechanics. I think those things are the bread and butter of catch. We do them better than anyone else. And I think the jiu-jitsu world can benefit from that.
I think you definitely nailed it. I have some, how do I say this? when explaining catch to people who practice jiu-jitsu is quite complicated, because in one way, jiu-jitsu is a very put the pin aside and the pin compliance, and from a positional point of view, it's very complete because they can fight on the back. Okay, I always look at catch as basically the bridge point, because a lot of folk style wrestlers end up doing jiu-jitsu. And a lot of jiu-jiteros like to take folk style wrestling, especially if they're inside the States. But I find that well, only if they're in the States, actually, because rather than be freestyle.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But I always find catch, basically, the way I explain is take folk style wrestling, add all the things that are illegal, and submissions, which are illegal as well. And I think that's it. And I think you nailed it on the thing. I think one of the issues that catch wrestling has, and it's a very spot on issues too, is the fact that it's associated with professional wrestling. And don't get me wrong, that's a big part of catch wrestling, and it's something that I think is a beautiful part of catch wrestling. But when you're going into the martial arts industry or into the grappling arts and grappling sports industry, unfortunately, people don't really want to learn that. So they want to learn stuff that would work at the Abu Dhabi or in the UFC. And the second is, I think a lot of catch wrestling, once again, the beauty of it, there's a lot of history in there. It's an international art. It's definitely a very British and American art, especially here. But they rely too much on the history instead of where catch wrestling needs to go. And I think the reason they do that is due to the fact of the professional wrestling history. So my question to you is, you have North American catch. Where do you see North American catch benefiting someone coming from another style of catch?
Oh, sure. So, and I'm saying this, and this is controversial, but it's absolute truth. North American catch is the most complete out of all of the catch wrestling systems, because there's 12 styles of catch wrestling. But North American catch is the most complete. North American catch is the actual system that gave birth to collegiate folk style wrestling. Okay? Which is why which is why also when you look at me, you can't tell the difference between a collegiate folk style wrestler and myself.
It's true. I do agree.
Nothing looks any different in what I'm doing except for when I deploy the submission, and I deploy the submission within the wrestling sequences. Now, when you look at, for example, the histories of each of these styles of catch, the corridor they passed through oftentimes forced them to encounter cultures that would drop certain techniques.
Okay, so like England's right now in
English. Yeah, I'm getting there. So in the English style, this is really important. So when you think of it, in the English context, for example, mind you, we know the origin of catch, but when you think about when it started to take shape globally, right? Depending on the corridor that it passed through and which culture it was being incubated in, it dictated which techniques were either favored or used. In England or in Europe, it was offensive to choke people, generally speaking. Like in the English, mindset, choking meant that you didn't have skill, because anybody can choke with limited skill. So because of that, they favored the neck cranks. Also, they had a touch pin rule with their matches. So most of their submissioning never happened. You're training all these submissions, but you're not really using them because of how quickly the matches would end via pin. And if you look at the historical data, you see that a lot of these old catch wrestling matches, especially over in Europe, they ended in a pin. If you look at Shoto, this was a MMA style promotion, but certain things were not allowed, like striking from the mount. Certain things were not allowed, and it shaped how they executed and they practiced their submissions as well. Okay. The Shoto style emphasized a great deal of lock flow, influenced by Carl Gosch, a lot of lock flow, but none of these lock flows actually happen in practice that way. So it was a way to transmit submission knowledge, but when you looked at the wrestling ability was not on par to what would be a collegiate wrestler.
Also, I did Judo for a long time in the 90s. In my opinion, most of the throws from Judo were more Judo-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, but yeah, I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm getting there too. So now when you come to America, right? The American mindset is take the most vicious technique, the most vicious application, make it as aggressive as possible, be able to utilize it in any setting, combat and otherwise. Anything goes, no holds are barred. And we had a 3-second pin. And it wasn't just a touch pin where your back hit the ground. It was your shoulders had to be flat. And because of that, now our submissioning could come in. We also choked. We did a lot of that. Now you obviously have, that's why we have so many people in the North American lineage that are called stranglers, right? Because we would choke you. It was a part of our customary practice of training catch. And also it was the North American catch wrestlers that developed the body scissors. You didn't see it being utilized in other styles generally because of the touch pin rule. So we developed the body scissors. We also developed leg entanglements. When it got to North America, we focused more on the leg lock system. So we developed that more over here. So if you talk to, if you see old clips of like Billy Robinson and all these guys, you notice like a lot of those English style guys, they didn't shoot. Shooting was developed and focused on in North American catch for the sole purpose of getting to a leg and submitting with a leg lock. So North American catch is the most complete out of all the catch systems, which is why it's an easier transition for a folk style wrestler to come train North American catch than it is for them to go train something else, because it's very, very wrestling based. Everything is within the wrestling. It's very familiar to them. So we have a greater emphasis on hand fighting and throws as well, because As Sentel is in our lineage, and As Sentel beat the entire Kodokan school of judo. And so we have a greater emphasis on throws. Now, the last thing I'll say is the 1913 Judo Manual, which was a comprehensive guide on techniques, submission, throws, pins, nawaze, everything. Shadi, a judo commentator, analyzed the submissions that I use that I showed on Instagram. And I faced a lot of criticism. Guys were saying, oh, that's BS. That will never work in real life. I had catch guys. Oh, that's BS. Da-da-da. But As Sentel is in my lineage. Okay? And guys before that who were contemporaries with the Kodokan school of judo. And the level of submission knowledge and positional knowledge, it was very comparable. When he looked at my footage, he said, all of these moves that I see him doing, I can see them in the 1913 manual of the Kodokan.
Shadi's
and the Tiger
the real
Scrolls.
deal. Yeah,
Yes.
he's a friend.
And the fact
So
that
yeah,
yeah, and the fact that you can see that there, you don't see it across the other catch wrestling styles. It's not there. So I have made the statement before, when you're talking about one of the last living lineal North American catch wrestlers with the most complete system is North American catch wrestling. I mean, you have other North American stylists. I'm obviously not the oldest one, but I'm saying as far as those with the school that are active right now, I can point to that and say, without question, the North American style is the most complete out of all of them, because the North American style did not pass through professional wrestling. That's the other thing. It only passed through the combat community.
although
And then,
Luke
yes,
says was a professional wrestler, but he was also a shooter.
yes, he was a true shooter. Yes,
He was a
he
true
was a true
shooter.
shooter.
Could actually
He was a
fuck
true shooter.
people up. Yeah.
Yes, he was a true shooter. And then the other offshoot was it branched off into collegiate wrestling, right? And that's it. And then you had the Carney system develop, which went to the carnivals, which was a condensed version of North American style catch that focused more on counter wrestling, defensive style wrestling, right? But the North American lineage, you can trace it all the way back, and all the combat elements are still there. And the idea that powered it, having the most aggressive, being the most effective, being able to deal with different types of fighters. This was the tradition of North American catch. Everything else was effectively feeding off of that. But I'm part of the last lineage that maintained its integrity throughout.
That is very cool, and it does explain quite a bit in the catch world.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
And I will say also, I say that, but I also say you see like the Aussie style catch, it is very similar to North American style catch. So I would say Aussie and North American style more so, but the most complete North American catch for sure.
it's very interesting. You know, I wish there was more information out there, but it also, if you put information, that's only one part of the battle. People have to be willing to accept and read that information. That's the other side too.
Sure.
And there is
Yeah,
quite a
course.
bit of resistance against catch. I see it, and a lot of it's just misinformation, and they always believe that it's professional wrestling. And there's a lot of guys out there who are very good at marketing. It doesn't mean they're good at catch themselves. But in that, you actually have a very successful school. Like, you have quite a few students and growing. Do you find that, especially now in 2025, that you're getting more and more people coming in compared to, let's say, 5 years ago?
Yes. So when we initially opened, I trained them in the old methodology, which was every day was, 3 hours of hard, intense training, so the first 30 minutes was a warm up. The next 45 minutes was, hand fighting and drilling and stance and motion and movement. Then we went into, drilling and then live wrestling. And then we went into conditioning for the last 30 minutes of practice, right? And this was every single day. Guys were throwing up left and right. Guys were dropping outside of the gym. They walk outside and they were just dropping like flies. Some guys couldn't make it 15 minutes in practice because of how intense it was. And so we had a 97% dropout rate. And that juxtaposed against, all of the folks walking in trying to challenge me for, to prove catch wrestling was BS, so I'm fighting a lot of these folks, repelling potential customers, potential members, and then the existing members are just completely burnt out because they're like, this training is so hard. And so I had to revise our training schedule. So I had to break it down between 2 days of performance days, so Mondays and Wednesdays, where we are training hard and we have a light day of wrestling, and then 2 days of technical training, and then a day where we have a competition mat where people get to test their skills, right, real time, and they're testing their skills under folk style, freestyle, Greco, mixed with judo rules, if you will, and then submission grappling, submission wrestling rules. So they get to train and get a feel for all different types of other grappling arts. But once we made that change, then we started to see the growth. Then we started seeing people wanting to come in and wanting to learn. I think we've also benefited from the fact that a lot of the traditional jiu-jitsu academies here could not fight the leg lock wave that came. So because they had to deal with leg locks and just the power of certain personalities in the jiu-jitsu world, no-gi could not turn an eye to no-gi, right? And so they wanted to develop their own independent no-gi programs, and they went to wrestling. And so they tried to teach wrestling, thinking they could teach wrestling as jiu-jitsu guys, only to find out wrestling is another grappling language, and it's an entire system. You can't just say, oh, I can just recreate that right here, right now in my lab. No, you're talking about thousands of years of knowledge.
It's a different philosophy. Like
it's a different philosophy. Yeah, different philosophy. And so you can't just pick it up and not understand why moves were created in the first place and why and how they are being used, right? And so we have become the people's choice with respect to wrestling because they've gone to jiu-jitsu academies. And I encourage you, jiu-jitsu academies, to continue to push your wrestling programs. I encourage you to continue to be on USA Wrestling because people go to your academies and then they immediately look for me. So you're giving me free marketing because when they come to my academy, they go, oh, this is this is real wrestling. This is real submission wrestling. So so you guys, you keep doing what you do because you're helping me save a ton of money with marketing. And so, we sit at about 80 members right now for a wrestling academy. That's rather substantial. And our ages range from as young as like 4 up to 63. And we train, not only that, but I'm proud to say we're the choice for law enforcement in the city as well. So we train law enforcement and military as well. So I do a lot of tactical trainings because we've proven the application of catch wrestling in a combat sense. And so you're talking easily having impacted more than 600 law enforcement individuals, right, within the span of 5 years. And we've trained more than 5,000 athletes in the span of 5 years. And that's just me, one coach, no coaching staff. So everybody's passing through the gym and getting exposure to catch wrestling. And then when usually they ask, so what is catch wrestling? I tell them, and I'm talking to an American audience, so you got to forgive me, but I explain to them, catch wrestling is the combat version of collegiate folk style wrestling. It's the combat version, right? It is unlocking everything that is illegal in wrestling and using it for combat. And so anything that is PD is catch wrestling, but I'm going to show you how to use it. And that's when they go, oh, so it's not jujitsu at all. No, it's not. Okay. And so I had to figure out how to explain catch wrestling while simultaneously cutting through all of the preconceived notions about catch wrestling. But just explaining it's the combat version of collegiate folk style wrestling, right? And everything that is PD is allowed. And immediately they go, oh man, I like that. I want to see what that's like. And then we we get on the mats, and we do it consistent with the culture of wrestling. You know, we don't walk around with ranks in the gym. Granted, people earn merit ranks, they earn battle ranks, but it comes from competing. It comes from you actually getting out there, learning and applying what you know. There's no technical testing. I will never test a guy to say, oh, do you know this technically? Because wrestling, you cannot call yourself a wrestler and you can't wrestle. That it doesn't make any sense because of the physical nature of wrestling, the attributes you need to develop, the traits and characteristics you need to cultivate a talent. No. So when you walk into our gym, everybody there has no choice but to wrestle. And so we have a filtration system. You come in, you survive the room. And you survive the room, you can become a wrestler.
You just said something that's so resounding. You're so right. You cannot be a wrestler if you can't wrestle. And I'll explain to the audience, a lot of the audience does wrestle, but I'll explain for those who don't. How do I say this? Okay. If you do jiu-jitsu, you do have to learn a lot of techniques. And most guys, when you get to a certain level of belt, they'll ask you, oh, you're a black belt, but you don't know this technique. But not every wrestler knows every technique. And I'll give you a little bit controversial analogy here. But for example, let's take one of the best wrestlers of all time, Jordan Burroughs. I don't know if Jordan Burroughs knows the entire technical, curriculum of the Russian national team. I don't think he even probably knows 5% of it. But what he knows world class, and the man can wrestle. Mm-hmm. And I think you just nailed it on the chin. By the way, I'm sure Jordan Burroughs knows 80%. I didn't mean 5%, but I was trying to show. Yeah, no, I just realized what I said. Yeah, but you're so right, because I've met a lot of great wrestlers who are just such beasts, but they still can improve technically. And then you meet some guys who are technical wizards who they're mediocre wrestlers, but very technical, but they can still wrestle. You don't get that in a lot of you do in jiu-jitsu, because in jiu-jitsu you have to be able to roll. But in wrestling,
and that's
it's
different than wrestling. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say the roll, and I do appreciate jiu-jitsu for that, because the rolls where it's the acid test. But in wrestling, mm-hmm. it's if you would roll all the time like you wrestle, they would probably try to fight you because they would think you're fighting them when you're actually wrestling. In wrestling, also, when you go really hard, people generally don't get offended. They know you got to get hard.
They respect it. They
respect it. And, if you say you're the man, you're going to be tested. And it's not a bad thing. But in other martial arts, there's a lot of respect, maybe because of the Japanese heritage. But you're 100% right about that. And that is mind-blowing that he said that, because that's the first time I heard that.
Well, yeah, and I think also, I don't think you can call yourself, first, you can't call yourself a wrestler if you can't wrestle. And wrestlers listening to this, they know what I mean. There's just some fundamental knowledge that you only will get training wrestling, competing in wrestling. In the wrestling community, there are no hobbyists. No one that wrestles says it's my hobby.
Wrestling is also kind of like, you got to like punching yourself in the face, because you know that I got a funny story. I wrestled my whole life, but there was a time I tore my MCLs a lot in wrestling. Oh, the dragon juice. Hey, but
it's there, baby, it's there.
You got it. And I got back into wrestling after a few years hiatus, and I think that's the right word for you, is away from it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I gained a lot of weight, because I was always I would say super duper heavyweight, but super heavyweight, depending on the year. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even shoot anymore. Couldn't do anything, but I could grind.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who I used to actually pretty much coach him. I said, can you coach me? And that's very common in wrestling with friends, right? So I came and, we were building up, and he got some new guys in the club, and he goes, okay, listen, I didn't know this, but before I came a little bit late, and he goes, okay, buddy, we're going to have an extremely hard practice. It's going to sweat. And I just said, okay, let's go. And he turns and he goes, see, that's a wrestler. You understand? There is no, you just do it,
Yes.
Just do it.
I mean, so wrestling is a mirror. Jiu-jitsu is a painting. Right? And since you've done both, you know exactly what I mean. Wrestling is one of those things where when you look at yourself, you're like, I'm not tough enough. I'm not as strong as I thought I was. That guy was way more explosive than me. I don't know this. It breaks you down. It breaks your will, right? And it also gets to the training methodology. It is a grind. You have to constantly look at yourself to see, do you have the wherewithal to make it through a practice? To make it through a practice. Can you make it through the warm-up? Nowhere in the world of jiu-jitsu ever has anyone been like, bro, I don't think I'm going to make it through this jiu-jitsu warm-up. I don't think I'm going to make it through shrimping down the floor. All right? I don't think I'm going to make it through double shrimping. I don't think I'm going to make it through doing cockroaches down the floor. I don't think I'm going to make it through forward rolls. I don't think I'm going to make it through escape technical stand-up. I don't think I'm going to make it through this light jog twice around touching my heels. I don't think I'm going to make it through. When you're in a wrestling warm-up, you're 15 minutes, 20 minutes in, and you're like, man, I got 20 more minutes. It's going to be a 40-minute warm-up. Am I going to make it through or not? So...
questioning life.
Right, you questioning life, and you're like, I question what I ate before. I'm exhausted. I'm about to faint. So that's what it feels like in wrestling. Jiu-jitsu, however, is you're able to look at a blank canvas and you're able to decide how you paint.
It does have its beauty and has its place, but
it does. But I'm saying it's
not wrestling.
It's different. It's not wrestling, and that's why wrestling can not look as artistic as jiu-jitsu. Right?
It's also why I think wrestling will never be true wrestling. I'm talking about. I don't think it'll ever be as large in terms of participation compared to jiu-jitsu. It's because, for example, you said when you first had your classes, people were barfing and throwing up outside. And you know why it was.
Some of them were laying in it too.
Well, I mean, if you're going to barf, you might as well lay. But in the end of the day...
you might as well do it the right way.
You might as well make a story out of it, right? But...
yeah.
You say wrestling practice, like, I don't think people realize that that's a club, like even at a club level, like a proper university club, it's not far off from varsity. In fact, it could be the same. It's not funded
that's right.
From there, and you're not competing in the actual NCAA at the time, or if you can, in the university league side.
Yeah.
But what happens is that type of practice is an athletic practice. It's a practice that your ultimate goal is to get to the Olympics. That's the ultimate goal of every wrestler, to win the Olympics for his country. Jiu-jitsu, you don't have that. Jiu-jitsu, the first goal for most people is, and I'll say, it's self-defense. It's to lose a bit of weight, to feel good, community.
And that's what I mean by, that's what I mean,
it does
it's
well.
a painting.
Yeah, and it does well.
That's what I mean, and that's what I mean, it's a painting, because you're looking at this canvas and you're like, okay, my goal is to win this local tournament. I paint that. I want to lose 5 pounds. I want to do this. Whereas in wrestling, you're like, dude, I'm questioning my life. Am I as tough as I thought I was? I've seen some of the best wrestlers in the country come to my gym. And I've seen them cry on the mats because they got their will broken. I've seen them get put in half Nelsons, turned over, and I see them break. I've seen some of the best wrestlers in the city run out of the mat room crying. Then they go on the world stage and they dominate. I've seen it. That's what wrestling does to you.
Yeah. And wrestling, you're going to lose, you know? You're going to lose
for sure.
hard.
Yeah. And so it's just, so going back to just, you know, just that difference. Wrestling is not necessarily for hobbyists.
I would have
everybody
to
agree. Everybody in the room is a competitor for the most part. In the jiu-jitsu environment, if you got, let's say, 40 people on the mats, you could have only 5 competitors, and everyone else could be a hobbyist. And they're not really there to beat you. They're there to be the best they can be. But in that,
for that.
Yeah. But in the mat room, everybody wants the alpha spot. Everybody's there to grind.
Everyone wants to be
the
king of the jungle there.
And everybody wants to be king of the jungle. And that is very important now in dealing with catch. And this is also very controversial. I said, you cannot call yourself a wrestler unless you can wrestle. You cannot call yourself a catch wrestler if you can't wrestle.
That's very true.
You cannot, and I'm saying this to the catch wrestling world, this is controversial. And for those of you who know me, right, let me be very clear. I will say what I want. I will say what is true. And I don't care about consequence. I don't care about smoke. I'm a true blue bred lineal catch wrestler. You can disagree, totally fine. You can get the smoke, totally fine. At the end of the day, if you are saying you are a catch wrestler and you cannot wrestle, you don't have the right to say you're a catch wrestler. You don't have that right. Now, you can do what you want, but I'm just telling you, you don't have the right. That's really stolen valor. Wrestling is about valor. You can call yourself that because you went through the grind. That's why we say embrace the grind. But, and the last thing, shame on you catch wrestlers who train in a facility next door to an actual wrestling club, but you are unwilling to go into that wrestling club and actually wrestle because you don't train wrestling. You just train catch submission locks. Shame on you. You do not have the right to call yourself a catch wrestler. Catch wrestlers are wrestlers. If you can't wrestle, don't call yourself a catch wrestler. Wrestlers wrestle. Sorry, Grap. I had to get that out there.
You know, I had an interesting.
That's like a jiu-jitsu guy that doesn't do jiu-jitsu. Come on, bro. That's like, I do jiu-jitsu, but what do? I don't do jiu-jitsu, but I do jiu-jitsu. Like, wait, what? No jiu-jitsu guy can ever show up and be like, yeah, you know, I do jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I don't do jiu-jitsu. Only a catch wrestler, a fraudulent one, only they can say, yeah, I do, but they don't wrestle. Come on, man. It's the Starbucks kicking in.
Well, I'll say something to add on to that. So let's take a theoretical idea here to prove your point. If let's take a really tough U.S. wrestler, let's say Jaden Cox, because he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Okay, and I believe he's one of yours too. I think he's very talented.
Yeah.
I think you take that guy, give him 2 months of catch wrestling, just the subs, and maybe some pain compliance, which he probably already knows. The guy's killing everybody.
Easy.
Anything. But you can't take a guy who only does subs, who's never wrestled, and give him 2 months of wrestling, and now say, let's compete with that Jaden Cox. It's not
correct. You can't. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Because so one of the things, there's two things in wrestling that we do better than everybody else. Judo does a good job of it too. Let me, say, and Sambo does a good job of it too. We build your athleticism, right? And your physicality. Athleticism plus physicality creates a dynamic grappler. You're able to think faster. You're able to execute more efficiently. Your energy is better. And then, I got to add a third. Third thing is your conditioning. King of it all. Conditioning. The fact that in certain grappling systems, due to monetary incentive, and I will say this is the case for the world of jiu-jitsu, which I've seen up close and personal, the emphasis on conditioning is almost non-existent.
Be it the top schools, but that's a very small
small percentage, right? But if you're looking at when you walk into an academy and you're going to train jiu-jitsu, the first thing you think of is, if you're going to do some type of rolls or practicing some techniques, specific training, right? The last thing that comes to your mind is, when I go in there, oh man, I got to deal with all the conditioning. So when that guy was out last night and he was drinking some beers, he was pounding them back, and then the next day he got up like, I'm just going to go train jiu-jitsu. Nothing in that guy was like, oh man, I probably shouldn't have drank last night because they're going to be doing all this crazy conditioning in the jiu-jitsu class. But same guy went out and drank the night before, and he's got to go to wrestling practice the next day. He's regretting, like, shit, dude, oh my God. So,
and the coach is going extra hard on him because he notices he's.
I do it. I'm not gonna lie. When I see you walk in, especially what gets me, if I see guys, because I'm on Instagram and different social media platforms with guys. If I see my guys, I message them, hey, how you doing, man? What's up? And these guys tell me, oh, I'm good, coach. Okay. And then I see that you doing stupid stuff. You're not maintaining your body. Okay. But when you come into practice, when I see you walk through those doors, I tell people this, and they know this about me. I say, I'm in a good mood. And when I'm in a good mood, that means it's going to suck for you. So I'm in a good mood today. And they start, are we doing conditioning? Are we doing conditioning? You know it's coming. And then when they start to see certain people walking in, I'm like, and especially if people walking in late, there's not a issue with you coming in late. But when you come in late, I realize that you're not warmed up as much as the other guys. So I got to make up for lost ground. So I'm going to make something more intense in order to make sure everybody's harmonized, So, but conditioning, athleticism, and physicality is what we do best in wrestling. And like I know, Grap, a guy could be less technical than you, but if he has better athleticism, he's more physical, and he's more conditioned than you. That guy's a problem to deal with.
That's a big problem. There's an interesting story. Rulon Gardner, who, for those of you who don't know, he's the guy who beat the great Alexander Karelin in the Australian Olympics for the gold medal in Greco-Roman wrestling. So he always battled the weight after that. He almost died a few times. A very interesting life story. And I was watching on, I don't remember what it was, some sports show, and he was talking about how he started to wrestle again with, I think he went to the Olympic Center, and people said, yeah, you're probably killing him. And he's a very honest guy. He said, no, I'm getting, basically said he's getting smashed. And a lot had to do with, because of that, if you're not in peak shape, so I'm a little bit different. I think wrestling, if and I'll ask you this question later, actually. So I won't get into it, but he was telling the truth, and I've experienced this myself. You know, if I come somewhere and I weigh 180 kilos or 170 kilos, I'm a big guy. I look like an idiot when I wrestle. But if I cut down to 125, it's very scary, especially in the clinch. And it's very interesting that you say that, because in wrestling, it does have a huge sportive aspect, like athletic aspect. And I think because it's also grappling art, people don't realize the true athleticism of being a sport in wrestling. Now, jiu-jitsu sport, yeah, it's a great sport. I love watching it, you know, especially good matches, knockdown matches. But it's a very different sport because there's a lot of more endurance related, etc. Now with the Abu Dhabi and everything, which is no-gi, of course, it's becoming more like wrestling. But it's still not even close to, let's say, watching the Freestyle Wrestling World Championships. But
not at all.
It's an interesting you say. But now I'm going to ask an interesting question. I just thought it. So you got 3 things to choose that are most important for wrestlers. I want to know in order, what is those? So is it like conditioning, technique, and the third would be like a fighting spirit? 1 to 3, what's the most important, what's the middle, and what's the least? Not least, but the least of the 3.
Okay. Number 1, conditioning. Number 2, technique. Number 3, mindset.
So I have a different thing, but my wrestling background is definitely more Russian. So, by the way, I definitely, I'm not saying one is right or wrong. Mine is technique, conditioning, and then
conditioning.
mindset.
I know, so it's funny because the Russians, they place a greater emphasis on the technique side first. In America, we place more emphasis on the conditioning side first. So we just kind of switch number 1 and number 2. Yeah. Yeah.
The Americans are number 1 in conditioning, and number 2 is Cuba. But Americans, like, you're not beating an American in conditioning. It's like,
no.
You remember Vin Diesel and what do you call? What was that movie? He was in the Fast and Furious. He goes, "I live my," and he's got that big black car. That's the American wrestler, and the Russian wrestler. In comparison, I mean, they have great conditioning. Don't get me wrong, but it definitely is not that big black. What do you call it? Race car? That
turbo.
Yeah,
yeah.
Or supercharger, but it was good.
Yeah. I would say the reason I say conditioning is because as part of our conditioning, we're shaping the body in a way where you learn how to control the body through the conditioning, right? You learn how to hit the mats the right way, get up the right way. All this is part of your conditioning, because in our conditioning drills, you know, walking and sprawling, kangaroo hop, cartwheel, right? Forward roll, you know, Arabian roll, right? Where our bodies are hitting the mat, but we're learning to control our bodies, especially with our tumbling, right? Like the gymnastics work that goes into it. That's all conditioning. But that conditioning then, from an American standpoint, feeds directly into technique, because now the smoothness of your technique, and we train the technique at 3 levels. We train it rough, medium, and smooth, where you first start figuring out, you tinker around with it, then you start to apply it, and you're smoothing it out, and you're able to do it within a certain time sequence, right? So in America, we deal more with technique. We deal with timing. How many of these techniques within a sequence can I execute? Like, how many can I chain together? Like, I got 5 seconds. What can I do in 5 seconds? Boom, 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 boom. And I execute within a 3x3 time second frame. That's how I was trained, which is why you can see me hit something, and within less than 3 seconds, 4 moves have happened.
Proper chin wrestling.
Yep. And then the last thing is going to be the mindset for us, because American culture already has that bravado, and it's already kind of baked into the conditioning. It's already built into the attitude of the technique. And so we just kind of, it's like a fallout. And so we make sure that as you're going through these things, the mindset that falls out is the correct mindset. And if it's not, we check the mindset. And then we push you back through conditioning. And as we push you back through conditioning, now your mindset is right for the conditioning. And then your mindset is right for the technique. And then when you come back out on the other end with the mindset, now I'm like, yeah, I can talk to you. I've had kids in the class, and even men, who they're getting whooped on conditioning, they're getting whooped on technique, and then they start to cower. They start to run. They start to retreat. Okay? But then one day, I'll tell you, there was a kid, he's about 16 years old. He stopped running. He stopped retreating. And the guy he was wrestling, he was like, when did he become so strong? The physicality was already there. The conditioning was already there. He was already training technique, but the mind wasn't. The mind wasn't plugging in. The mind controls. And then after, I usually have talks with the athletes after mat. We call them after mat talks. And mind you, anything goes in the after mat talk. You never know what you're going to get. You know, you got wrestler brand and you're like, bro, you know what sounds really good right now? Cheese with pineapples. You know how it is, Grab. You know how we get.
I'm the super in every way. Trust me. I'm Mr. After Mat Talk.
And honestly, that's why I don't like to be around heavyweights after the mat, because it always is food talk.
Always food, or, well, you can eat it.
Well, yeah. But it's, yeah, right. But usually it's food, and you're like, this dude's 250 pounds. And he's talking about, yeah, man, I'm going to go get like 3 pizzas. And I'm thinking, like, when you're at the lower weight, right, 2 pounds makes a difference in whether or not you're going to be in your bracket or not. When you selfish heavyweights like yourself, Grap, you're like, I mean, I ate 10 pounds of food and I'm good. I still can compete. But I caught the kid after Matt, and I told him, I said, hey, man, you know, I just want to tell you, we see you as a man now. And he looked at me. And I'll break it down to you like this. I don't care what kind of belt somebody gives you in another grappling system. When another man who you respect looks you in your face and says, I see you and respect you as a man, that lives forever with you. Then when your brothers in the mat room say, I respect you, and we see you as a man, you earn the respect through the valor of the mat, right? Or if you are one of my female athletes and the guys say, man, we respect you as a warrior, we respect you, right? And you don't have to contend with them disrespecting you or nothing, because your skill, they see you through the merits of what you do. You can't undo that. Never forget that. And that mindset is key. So those are our 3.
It's just an interesting question. You know, it shows a lot. I think a lot of different systems will answer different, and it's just an interesting question. Val, we're gonna start wrapping this up. I want you to let know, how can people find you? I mean, what do you have going on?
Sure. So if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm cc_catch wrestling. There is where I post a lot of content, instructional, day-to-day live goals, controversial things, as far as, you know, altercations, whatever you want to call it. It's a lot of stuff there. A lot of people learn from my Instagram page. Please like and then follow. Also, if you're in the San Antonio area and you're on the if you're near Lock and Terra, UTSA, we're on Vance Jackson and 1604, Combat City Catch Wrestling. We are conveniently located across the street from Starbucks, and they know me very well. Please feel free to pop in. You can go to our website if you want to submit a request for a free trial class, www.combatcitysa.com. That SA is for San Antonio. So combatcitysa.com. And those are our handles. And if you want to, see us, feel free to pop in. Just be prepared to work hard. We love to have you.
This has been a very fun interview to get to know Val better. Val's a good friend. We co-host on another podcast called Level Up Grappling. And until next time, if you can like and subscribe always helps. And listen, guys, have a great day and grab, throw, tap.